The Mutant Dream. Every age has its fantasy of sudden transcendence, and ours was born glowing green in the shadow of the atomic bomb. When the world foresaw Hiroshima and the mushroom cloud, it also saw the dawn of a new mythology, radiation as both destroyer and creator. From the Incredible Hulk blasted by gamma rays to Spider-Man's radioactive bite, the Fantastic Four bathed in cosmic light, and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles swimming in toxic ooze, the mid-century imagination found a strangely hopeful horror in Mutation. Science was changing everything, so why not us too? But in the real world, evolution works on patience of eons, not comic book seconds. Mutations are the stuttering misprint in life's script, most of them neutral, meaning harmful, and only a rare few helpful. They don't turn accountants into superheroes overnight, they turn fin tips into fingers across deep time. Still, the mutant myth endures because it speaks to our longing that at any moment we might wake up transformed. Yet if evolution can make bacteria into brains, why not an X-Man? That's the question we'll test against the hard math of biology and the soaring hopes of fiction. What evolution really does. In science, a mutation is simply a change in the genetic code. One misplaced letter in life's four-character Gattaca alphabet. Most slip by unnoticed, some break the machinery. A vanishingly small number will make it run a little better. Natural selection is the slow accountant that tallies which changes pay off, keeping the profitable ones over countless generations. Evolution isn't a sculptor with a vision, it's a gambler who never stops betting, and time is its bankroll. Real mutations do not add new organs or powers overnight because complex traits require coordination of thousands of genes, developmental pathways, and energy balances. You take Cyclops from the X-Men, who shoots gigawatt-level laser beams out of his eyes. Ignoring where the power is coming from or being stored at, and I gather they retconned him recently to be able to open portals and that's where it's coming from, which might circumvent that problem. But even a tiny fraction of the energy leaking out to his head as he shot it should explode his brain. Nature can't just drop in laser eyes without a power source, cooling system, and brain architecture to aim them. When we do see dramatic shifts, wings from limbs, color vision from chemical tweaks, they're the sum of millions of small, compatible edits that happen to work together. We might say the same thing about telepathy or telekinesis, like Jean Grey has, Cyclops' longtime girlfriend. Now, psychic powers are practically omnipresent in any sci-fi from the 20th century, because most people didn't think we really needed to evolve it spontaneously. They tend to think we already had it, and it was innate to humans, so you just had to be trained in its use or have some mutation that enhanced it. I think the rising electronic and digital era, complete with advanced brain scanners, helped people realize just how complicated something like that would need to be as a mechanism. To speak to someone else's mind, you need some way to interact with the organs of their brain in a coherent method, and it would be like evolving a brain scanner and a whole chunk of new brain to interpret the data. That would have to be an incredibly powerful scanner too, to function at any kind of range, requiring a serious power supply into a brain that already has power and cooling issues. Adapting any other existing hardware to the job would be like expecting to use a microphone or speaker to read the text on your screen by scanning not the screen but the processor. Theoretically doable, but requiring huge amounts of technical effort just to get the most basic functionality. Evolution does not work that way. Evolution tends to piggyback on existing hardware to get a new task done. You want to move something with your mind. Use your hand that your mind already controls, a hand that develops slowly from a front leg that originally just helped you move. You want to speak words. Use the mechanism you already developed to roar loudly to scare others away, that you developed from an existing throat and lung system dedicated to the different task of fueling you. Now you're making a sound, one others can hear because of lots of incentive to develop a pressure-based sensory organ, sensitive to shifts and vibrations, and it can be incrementally improved until an organism might have sufficient delicate ears and enough brain devoted to interpreting the data those ears receive to make a language viable. The truth is that evolution's genius lies in iteration, not inspiration. It's a process that favors good enough over glorious, because survival rewards reliability, not spectacle. For all its grandeur, life's diversity is built from the slow arithmetic of mutation and selection, not the sudden poetry of a radioactive miracle. And the difference between myth and mechanism will set the stage for why superpowers, as fun as they are, almost certainly cannot evolve on their own. Evolution 101. Evolution is the long game of life, an endless series of small experiments that occasionally hit the jackpot. It isn't about progress or destiny, it's about survival and persistence. Every living thing today, from jellyfish to jaguars, represents an unbroken chain of success stretching back nearly 4 billion years. Most organisms that are born never reproduce, but every single one of your ancestors did. It's an interesting way of looking at things because seen backward, the probability of success in surviving to breed is less than a coin flip odds, and yet every one of your ancestors, typically doubling every generation back, had to win that coin flip many millions of times in a row. That's a great example of the anthropic principle. You and I can only notice how improbable we are because we are around to do the noticing. Countless other iterations of our ancestry did not come to be, at least in this universe. Maybe they did in some other part of the hypothetical multiverse. Evolution is random, and it's good to remember the kind of odds involved in the various steps. Evolution had no genius of invention, as it is random and unguided, we assume. So instead its strength lies in its patience. Given enough time, even a random walk can climb a mountain. The process runs on 4 main gears: variation, inheritance, selection, and time. Mutation provides variation, little transcription errors when DNA copies itself. Most of those errors are neutral or lethal, but a rare few give owners a subtle edge. If that edge helps them survive long enough to reproduce, their descendants might carry that trait forward. Since we're not an amoeba undergoing mitosis, you've already got that 50-50 chance that a good trait actually got passed on to a kid. Since a good trait mostly does not change your odds of survival or breeding all that much, it is worth remembering that the mutations might pop up a handful of times before catching on, even when beneficial. It's all a statistics game. Given millions of generations, those tiny advantages add up. The giraffe does not sprout its long neck overnight. It stretches millimeter by millimeter, generation after generation, until you have an animal that can pluck fruit from a tree without ever leaving the ground. Now, size alone is not what makes a mutation difficult. A small feature can be vastly harder to evolve than a large one. Making humans a foot taller takes far fewer genetic changes than giving us a new organ like a third, functional eye. Growing an extra finger is actually fairly common as a mutation. It happens in both humans and other animals. My cat Flax has 26 toes. But growing an entirely new sensory system is another matter entirely. Still, science fiction loves its third eyes, especially the psychic kind that see things our ordinary eye cannot. And truth be told, nature is not entirely opposed to the idea. Many creatures already have something close to a third eye. Reptiles such as lizards and tutara, and even some amphibians and fish, possess a light-sensitive organ on the tops of their heads called a parietal eye. It cannot form detailed images, but it does detect light and dark, helping to regulate body rhythms and orientation. In a sense, we still carry a remnant of that ourselves, the pineal gland buried deep within our brains, a blind echo of that ancient light-sensing organ. So while you are unlikely to wake up with a third eye that sees the future or helps you navigate space-time, evolution has experimented with the idea more than once. It's just never found a good reason to keep the upgrade. What's often misunderstood is that evolution does not plan or optimize, it improvises. It's more like a mechanic keeping an old car running than an engineer designing a new one. It patches, repurposes, and reuses whatever's lying around. Wings are modified arms, ears are tuned pressure sensors. The human spine is still the awkward compromise of a fish skeleton forced to stand upright. When nature wants a new function, it does not start from scratch. It modifies what's already there. That's why superpowers don't show up in nature. They require brand new systems, not incremental tweaks. Flight didn't just need wings, it needed hollow bones, new muscles, and an entirely different metabolism to power them. To shoot lasers from your eyes, you need a biological laser cavity, focusing lens, and power source, and some way to avoid frying your brain, all evolving together in perfect synchrony. The odds of that happening spontaneously are roughly the same as dropping random stones and getting a working smartphone. And yet, the marvel of evolution is that even without miracles, it still builds wonders. Bioluminescent fish, electric eels, infrared seeing snakes, and cephalopods that can rewrite their own RNA to change color and texture in seconds. Nature already does things that would seem like superpowers if we hadn't studied them. Real evolution may not give us Superman, but it gave us life itself, and that's a much harder trick to pull off. In that few of us think of the ability to speak to anyone, anywhere on the planet instantly as a superpower in an era of smartphones, but it sure would have been any other time in human history, even for most of the time after the telephone got invented. Cell phones did not really exist when I was a kid, but long-distance bills definitely did. In this sense, a superpower is something that makes an individual stand out from the rest of the population. Standard mutations arising in the evolutionary process are just small variations on what is already present, so if it is a superpower, then everyone has it, or almost has it, or has some version of it, and if everyone is a superhero, no one is. A human capable of delivering strong electric shocks would be a superhero. An electric eel capable of the same is not. What is Superman that thou art mindful of him? Intelligently designed mutants. All of this assumes evolution is truly random, a fairly modern interpretation, and one that most people don't actually share, especially back when mutation fiction first caught fire. Whether it's a misunderstanding of the theory or a belief that some hidden intelligence guides life, most folks are not entirely comfortable with the idea that we're just the result of chance and chemistry. I can empathize with that perspective, but in today's context the irony always strikes me, because we so casually accept the idea of spontaneous mutants in fiction when it's so at odds with either Darwinian evolution or traditional thoughts on divine creation. People often use technology as an analogy for evolution, which honestly never works. Technology is literally intelligent design, and thus examples of how well it works are not great at convincing folks random chance will do better. And it doesn't. Evolution does not plan. Whether you lean toward evolution, intelligent design, some blend of the two, or something entirely else, that's your business. I've met rational and ridiculous people in every camp. But this is a science show, and Darwin's model of natural selection still stands as our best scientific explanation for how life becomes complex, so it is what we use as our default. Mathematically, random mutation works. It can explain the slow snowballing of change, but we have only one data point, so simply, our timeline is plausible because we are here. Maybe life was seeded here by aliens or designed by God. We will not debate that today. I bring it up because science fiction often sidesteps probability by adding a designer. Ancient aliens, secret labs, or super geniuses like X-Men's Apocalypse, Mr. Sinister, or the High Evolutionary, all tinkering with humanity's genetic future. The science is usually nonsense, but it's a good narrative stand-in for capabilities that might one day exist. After all, we've already made monkeys that glow in the dark, and nature certainly didn't come up with that idea. Monkeys would not benefit much from being highly visible at nighttime to predators. Super strength is definitely a better superpower, and fits in with SFA's motto and backup contingency plan for when finesse fails. If brute force isn't working, you're not using enough of it. And just in time for the holidays, we've expanded our SFA merchandise collection of mugs with SFA phrases on them to include t-shirts, hoodies, mousepads, stickers, and hats. Check those out now by using the QR code or the link in the description. The Atomic Age and the Birth of the Mutant Hero. To understand why radiation and mutation became so entwined in fiction, you have to look at the 1950s. The world had entered the Atomic Age, a time of enormous scientific promise shadowed by existential dread. Nuclear tests lit up the Pacific, fallout clouds haunted our nightmares, and suddenly, humanity realized it could reshape the world, or end it, in a flash of light. Out of that anxiety and awe came a new kind of mythology. Radiation as both curse and catalyst, a force that could destroy or elevate us beyond recognition. That's where we got the Incredible Hulk, blasted into a green juggernaut by gamma rays, Spider-Man bitten by a radioactive spider, the Fantastic Four, transformed by cosmic radiation, and Godzilla, the monster born from atomic fire. None of those make any sense at all from a scientific perspective, and you needn't write to me about how in some later work they explained it in more detail, as if true, it's simply a mark of the writer's creativity, not scientific acumen. Each story mirrored its era's hopes and fears. The power of science without its wisdom. The atom could level cities or light them, so why not awaken something inside of us too? With great power comes great responsibility, and if you can beat plows into swords, then you can do the reverse too. So why not use a terrifying nuke to forge an awe-inspiring hero? But the mechanics don't work. In reality, ionizing radiation is terrible at improving life. It breaks DNA strands, scrambles chromosomes, and causes cells to go haywire. Instead of unlocking psychic powers or super strengths, it tends to create tumors, burns, and birth defects. Radiation is nature's delete key, not its upgrade button. If you want a superpower from it, you'll be lucky to get glowing skin, and not the kind that looks good in the dark. Yes, you can technically use radiation to change DNA, that's actually how we do it, but not by nuclear bomb. Seems you can't make a beautiful sculpture by using a sledgehammer or write a book by using a paint sprayer. Yet for the post-war audiences, the metaphor worked. Mutation became a symbol of transformation, Our fear the next great leap in evolution might come not from nature, but from our own hubris. It was the atomic dream turned inward. We might doom ourselves, we might become something new. The evolutionary roadblocks to superpowers. So if radiation can't do it, could nature ever give us superpowers on its own? Probably not. Ignoring that it's not really a superpower if everybody else has it, no matter how cool it is, on very long timelines we might get some impressive results, many millions of years or more, which is short in evolutionary terms too, but many things just won't evolve. Unfortunately, physics and biochemistry conspire against it. You are not going to grow wheels, there's no functioning midstep to getting them. Moreover, every power comes with a price tag, and nature hates high-cost, low-return investments. Eye lasers need a power source that will not melt your skull. Super strength requires bone and muscle strong enough to lift buildings without snapping joints, all of which have to be paid for constantly by your diet and metabolism, when you often won't really need them. That's why you don't put muscle on when sitting around. There's no evolutionary advantage to having more muscle than you need, or less fat than you can carry, and not die from starving to death or ending up as something else's dinner. Flight demands wings big enough to lift a human body, and metabolisms that burn energy like rocket engines. Even regeneration, so common in comic books, is a nightmare of energy cost and cancer risk. Lizards can grow tails, but they can't afford to regrow brains, and that's probably for the best. And someone like Wolverine would catch on fire from how fast he regenerates some wounds. There are some plausible but rare powers that evolution could manage. We could get bigger and stronger. Nature does not hate that idea, and our useful traits nowadays include what people consider good consciously and subconsciously, so if you're twice as likely to have kids by sporting a beach body because people like that look more, then it's decently likely to become more common, even if it's not as useful in a sedentary lifestyle. We could, in principle, expand our color vision like birds or mantis shrimp, evolve greater toxin resistance like snakes, or improve endurance like migrating birds and whales. Nature's toolbox can be clever but never reckless. Engineered paths open more doors, as we mentioned earlier, but we'll return to that. Convergent evolution gives us a glimpse of what's possible and likely. Eyes popped up a lot in evolution and from separate origins. Electric eels generate shocks powerful enough to stun prey. Cephalopods change color and shape in seconds. Certain snakes see infrared, and deep-sea fish can produce their own light. Evolution's imagination is broad, but its engineering budget is small. It doesn't build superheroes, it builds survivors. That's why truly extraordinary powers are unlikely to evolve on their own. Evolution is constrained by physics, energy, and time. It rewards traits that work, not those that wow. Unless wowing makes things less likely to attack you. Ask the blowfish. Nature's heroes are not invincible, they're just efficient. Genetic drift and the vanishing edge. Even when evolution manages to build something new, it has to hold on to it, and that's not guaranteed. Small populations like those that might form on isolated islands or space colonies don't just risk inbreeding, they risk forgetting complexity. This is the work of genetic drift, the slow erosion of variation through random chance. Nor does having two smarter than average parents, or two stronger than average parents, guarantee a child with such traits. We tend to drift back to the average. If you're smart and your parents are both smart, odds are good a lot of your brains are as much nurture as nature. Imagine rolling dice to decide who passes on their genes. Sometimes you just lose the good numbers. Over time, small populations tend to become simpler, not more complex, because there's less raw material for evolution to work with. It's why endangered species struggle to recover and why your hypothetical mutant colony on Mars is not likely to evolve psychic powers. It's more likely to lose the ability to digest gluten first. Evolution needs diversity to climb upward. Without it, life just slides back down the hill. Real-world routes to post-human powers. If evolution won't hand us superpowers, that doesn't mean we can't take a crack at building them ourselves. We've already begun experimenting with genetic engineering and CRISPR, rewriting snippets of DNA the way a programmer edits code. We can make goats produce spider silk, bacteria glow in the dark, and lab mice that don't get fat no matter how much they eat. The real trick isn't changing the genes, it's knowing which levers to pull and which not to. Synthetic biology pushes that further, designing new genetic sequences from scratch. It's the difference between editing a novel and writing a new one in the same language. We can imagine engineered humans with great lung efficiency for high-altitude life, or improved blood chemistry to resist radiation, traits that might make Mars not just survivable but comfortable. Then there's cybernetics and AI symbiosis, a likely bridge between biology and machinery. Neural implants, brain-computer interfaces, and even wearable cognition assistants could grant memory recall, sensory augmentation, or direct machine control. In our earlier episode, Machine Monitors, we asked whether artificial minds might one day act as our guardians, but it's just as likely we'll become them, bit by bit, neuron by neuron. Directed evolution and designer embryos blur the boundary even more. A civilization might run genetic simulations for centuries, selecting for intelligence, adaptability, or creativity, the same way we select crops for yield. Add in viral gene therapy, where harmless viruses carry edited DNA into cells, and we're already toying with mutation on demand. This is evolution by invention rather than mutation. Random chance may have been our past, but intelligent design is probably our future, and we have whole episodes devoted to the advantages, challenges, and ethical issues, everything from cybernetics to genetic engineering, transhumanism, posthumanism, and even uplifting other animals. And that could potentially include engineering life to function on other planets, or finding simple alien life on some of those, and engineering it to greater complexity or intelligence. It does seem plausible given how many worlds there are for us to explore and experiment on, and how often fiction suggests aliens might have done that to us. The Fermi Paradox Connection. If evolution can't easily produce superhumans, maybe that helps explain why we don't see any out there. Intelligent life seems to arise rarely, and if it does, it probably discovers the same shortcuts we're exploring now: artificial selection, genetic editing, technological augmentation. The first true mutants in the galaxy might not be products of random chance, but of self-directed evolution. Yet that path comes with its own dangers. A species that can rewrite itself might also unwrite itself. Imagine civilizations that push enhancement too far, turning themselves into sterile post-biological entities, or machines with no instinct to reproduce, or dividing themselves into so many factions that commonality and kinship evaporate. Each leap forward risks the same fate as our fictional mutants: extinction by improvement. Evolution, for all its slowness, has one huge advantage: it builds things that last. Nature favors stability over spectacle. That may be why the galaxy seems quiet. It selects not for brilliance but for endurance. Civilizations burn bright and fast, chasing perfection, and could simply collapse before anyone notices them. So the Fermi Paradox may not be about where everyone went, but why the successful ones learned to stop mutating. They found equilibrium, smart enough to survive, wise enough to stop pulling at the genetic threads holding them together. Eliminating mutation is indeed possible. You simply preserve your original DNA in digital form, back it up in many places, and print or tweak existing DNA to return to that norm. Mutation is messy, slow, and almost never glamorous, but it works. Every living thing on Earth is proof that tiny random changes can sculpt miracles given enough time. Superpowers may belong to fiction, but evolution's real magic is persistence, the power to keep trying until the impossible becomes ordinary. We humans did not evolve laser eyes or telepathy. We evolved curiosity, imagination, and the ability to shape worlds around us. Our superpower is not mutation, it's invention. We are the species that writes our own next chapter, and maybe someday our own next genome. And that same curiosity, imagination, and resilience may one day let us claim the galaxy, which is quite a superpower.